long-awaited episode today. It's the B2B Adventures boys, Strick and Az, coming at you. Welcome to the New Spearo Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac, aka Strick, and you are in the home of spearfishing, where we get nutty and geeky about spearfishing with people from all over the planet every week. And today, it's the boys from up north. Strick and Az have been much requested on the podcast over the years, and I recently got to meet the boys. I was lucky enough to be out on a charter off Gladstone there in the bunker group in the Southern Great Barrier Reef, and these two were invited along as well, care of Adreno. So thanks to Adreno for putting this trip together, because it was awesome to get to meet the boys. And I didn't just get to meet Strick and Az, they also had their mate Anzac along for the ride. And Jeepers had some really good conversations over a few brews at night time with these lads, and also shared a couple of days diving. And they work a system, these boys, and they're bloody good divers, let me tell you. And I was flat out trying to keep up with them. Nevertheless, shot some good fish just hanging around with them, and I actually learned a ton just getting to dive and hang out with them. Just a pair of top blokes. And today's episode, you're going to enjoy it. These two boys know how to spin a yarn, and there's plenty of good actionable info today. We get nitty and gritty about hunting blackspot tuskfish and a couple of other bits and pieces, so stick in for the ride. I do want to tell you also, before we get into this show, because these boys are not real big into self-promo, so I'm going to do a little bit for them. Az has got another podcast called Yarns with Az and Taz. And if you like a good Australian podcast with a couple of outdoors sort of loving blokes, and both of them spear, they both have a farming background, very clever dudes from up in North Queensland. You're going to enjoy Yarns with Az and Taz, so check that podcast out as well. B2Badventures.com.au has got sort of everything the Back to Basics boys are up to along here. You can find their YouTube channel, their socials. They're big onto that, and their videos are, some of them have gone viral. Some of them don't, which is real weird, because I think they're all bloody good. But yeah, look, hold on to your seats today. You're in for a treat. The Back to Basics boys. Here we go, Strick and Az. This episode of the Noob Spearo Podcast is brought to you by spearfishing.com.au. They've been on board for more than 100 episodes, and I'd love for you to shop at spearfishing.com.au. They have a price beat guarantee, hassle-free returns, flat shipping rates across Australia, and you can save $20. For every purchase over $200, if you use the code NoobSpearo, you save $20. Thanks for supporting the Noob Spearo Podcast and shopping with spearfishing.com.au.
Audio check. Testes, big testicles. Barramundi 1, Barramundi 2, shivering dingo. Up the guts. Don't tell mum the dingo stole my baby. 1, 2, 3.
Perfect. That's staying in the interview too. Welcome to the New Spearo Podcast. It's the Back to Basics boys, and they're already up to mischief. So we've got Strick and Az. Introduce yourselves, gents.
G'day, Strick here from Back to Basics. Make up probably the uglier version of Back to Basics it's become known, but some would argue the brains behind the operation.
G'day, I'm Az from Back to Basics as well, and only trust 48% of what Strick says. Good to be here, Shrek, and it's been great to meet you over the last couple of days, brother.
Thanks for getting me out diving. You went out with us today, Az, because you wanted to have an internet, but
R&R, recharge, get ready for tomorrow. We'll be like bull at the gates, sunrise.
Today I got out with the boys and I really enjoyed diving with it. Zach sort of carried the team a bit, but yeah, Jack was missing in action a bit. But
I've got no rebuttal there, because it's absolutely true. Zach is an honorary member of Back to Basics, and he well and truly pulled his weight today.
Yeah, and the rhyming we had on board, we had Zach, Isaac, and Jack. There's too much going on there, so
see how we can fit Az into the mix tomorrow morning. So good luck with that one.
So, I mean, tell us how you guys got started spearing. How did you meet each other? When did the bromance start?
Well, that's about an hour in itself, but I'll try and make it concise. I personally started spearing as a natural progression from fishing and growing up on the land. My father's side being into growing fruit. Have a banana plantation amongst other exotic fruit up in tropical North Queensland, and mum's side was commercial fishing and cane farming. So they chased barren salmon up in the Gulf Carpentaria, and then during the winter they'd come back to the coast and do Spanish mackerel, red emperor, and harvest cane. So like during the week I was with Dad up the farm, and then on the weekends I'd be able to go out with my uncle and granddad, who initially we're just doing a lot of coastal diving, and we'd go just get your coral trout and your crays on the weekend when the weather was nice. So I started when I was about 11 or 12. My brother and I got given for Christmas from my uncle spear guns, and Mum was just mortified. But we were stoked, and it started a lifelong journey and passion for being underwater and hunting.
So you're a farm boy though?
Yeah, correct. Grew up on the farm, and between the rainforest and the reef, which I'm very, very grateful for.
Well, yeah, awesome. You grew up in a beautiful part of the world. Are you like second generation or more?
Third generation, yeah.
North Queenslander.
Yeah, third generation North Queenslander. My granddad's side been here since early Australian colonial times, but my mother's side was Maltese and came out as immigrants farming in the mid-1900s. Hard workers and relied on living off the land because they all grew up with nothing. So it was living off the rifle really, or a bit of net to try and get some fish.
Yeah, it's all starting to make sense, really. Some of your colloquialisms and all that. No, awesome, man. Awesome. Thanks for introducing. So what about you, Jack?
So with me, I grew up in Papua New Guinea, and it was probably the best upbringing I could possibly wish upon everyone. It was unreal. So where the spearfishing came into it, we'd go to school during primary school. So we were 5, 6, 7. At lunchtime, you'd go on lunch break. The school was right on the ocean. Everyone would run across, and half the group would go and scurry up the fruit trees and collect some fruit, and then the other half would either try jag fish or go spearfishing under the wharf and spear fish, and a few others would get a fire going, and you'd bring the fish back and cook it straight up on the coals there, and then you just head back to class in the afternoon once that process was all done.
If you felt like it.
Yeah, if you felt like it.
Back.
Yeah, or if you wanted to keep spearfishing, you just spear into the afternoon. So that's where it all started for me.
You guys, you seem very natural in the water. I guess it comes from spending a lifetime in it.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people ask us, what's the secret to holding your breath longer, or how do I dive deeper? And I'm not really that helpful with people in that question.
Doing it more.
Just doing it more. And starting young is definitely an advantage. And, the best practice or training is just doing it as much as you can. So I think that's kind of why we're both comfortable in the water.
Yeah, and growing up from under 8s, pretty much 6, 7, 8, I got into swimming, and then doing swimming competitively as a sport because Dad played rugby league and he can barely get out of bed in the morning. His shoulders and knees are crook as. And so he didn't want me playing footy. He's like, I just conserve the joints. Let's put him into the least impact sport we can possibly do. So he threw me in the pool, had to stare at the black line for 4 hours a day for about 10 years of my 8 to 18. But incredibly, that led to being incredibly comfortable in the water.
Did you compete?
Yeah, I did. I went down to Brizzy and swam for Queensland in high school.
What was your go-to?
Go-to was either 200 fly or 100-metre breaststroke. Yeah, so love the gutsy ones. But yeah, I remember when we were growing up swimming, I'd always just want to get the fins on and see how far I could go underwater, like how many laps of the pool you could do. It was a 25-metre pool, so you'd just be going up and back, up and back.
It's a wonder any of us survived, isn't it? I did it too. It was a little blue in the face and like, 6.5 laps, you won't be that, boys, because I had 2 little brothers. So it was
very competitive.
Yeah, and it's a recipe for disaster sometimes in the pool.
Hugely, yeah. You hear some horror stories, and obviously now as we've grown up and matured and having a lot of different experiences on the water through our own adventures, that you take safety as one of the highest priority before anything else when you're out there.
We'll get to safety. You guys, like I dived with 2 out of the 3 today, and it was super safe. There was a lot of really good communication, and most of it was non-verbal, but there's a really good system we worked to, and it felt really good. But we were working real guns, which some people make big arguments about are unsafe, but I felt like it was done really well today. But obviously, working in with experienced dudes, it's a little bit of a different story. But there's some big rules with real guns, I think. Yeah,
definitely. Real guns, as far as just from a pure hunting point of view, is our preference because you can get in and out of caves and you can lay quite discreet on the bottom, when you're in ambush, and it's just a lot less hassle in the water. But we didn't start off with real guns, and I think we sort of moved into real guns once we had that safety in a good safety structure of one up, one down. So with one person on the surface watching the person that does his dive all the way down, he's shoulder to shoulder with that person. And then on the way up, they make sure that he's had their recovery breaths, you do a bit of a dive handover, and this is also why you end up landing better fish this way, because you say, mate, there's a big mangrove jack up in the ledge, hit the bottom and work to your left. And then a lot of the time, that next diver dives down and targets that fish. So, but the safety, I think, you've done correctly, like you saw today, mate. It can be all good with the reel guns.
Yeah, completely. Half the fish that we get is because of teamwork. And like Strick said, you come up, do a quick handover. See anything down there? Yeah, there's quite a few spangos getting around the bottom. I recommend going to the left side of that rock. I just did the right side, and I saw a jack come around this, around the back there. So good chance it's going to keep your eye out for this. And then you go down and you've got in your head a bit of a plan of attack, so you're not wasting your time down there. You're conserving and making precious every dive.
And then the other thing with the reel guns, how they can get kind of dangerous, not just for the people in the water, but if the boatie's not quite onto it and you have one person swim off to the left and one to the right, then that's where you can get in real trouble with currents and losing divers.
Yeah, and another point, like with the whole reel gun float setup, while we weren't using, like we don't often use floats. We will if we're doing a lot deeper dives, and if we're obviously hunting blue water fish, such as doggies or wahoo, big spanos. But we've always got someone in the boat whenever we dive, at home, on personal trips, any diving we do, there's always someone in the boat. We never anchor. We've learnt that from experience. We find it's far more productive and far safer.
Today you weren't there, but we had a big tiger come in, and so having that boatie right there, just like, yep, we're out. It's just so easy. So there's heaps of benefits to it, and running interference with other boats if you're in a heavy boat traffic area is a huge one. Awesome. The first time I come across you boys was a YouTube video or a Facebook video, and it was the Blackout video. So you blacked out, yeah?
Yeah, correct. This is probably 7 years ago now, close to 8 years ago. I had a blackout off Cairns on, what reef were we at? Linden Banks, hunting dogtooth tuna, one of our first times out doing any blue water spearing. So, yeah, it was very memorable, unmemorable for me, how you look at it. But, yeah, it was definitely a defining moment in our relationship. And also in how we dive, and we very much restructured how we look at diving, especially blue water.
What was the background? Had you guys been diving all day?
No, so yeah, we went out of Cairns, sunrise as you do. It was a beautiful morning, 4 of us in the boat. It was one of those days where there wasn't a breath of air. Perfect. Went out and started having a dive, and in the morning early morning we've been doing some big dives, so constantly 20 plus, one after the other, and not having much break between dives. And prior to this, for context, we'd never done a free diving course at all. We'd never done any professional help from training whatsoever, not even looking up and reading ourselves, solely just cowboy diving. And then we progressed to diving deeper, and our curiosity led us to wanting to shoot larger fish. So we went out hunting dogtooth tuna, and I'd shot a couple of trout that morning, and we'd also got a shaft caught at about 23 meters, and that, like, we'd all done a couple of dives to get that out. So we'd done a couple of deeper dives, like ripping, trying to get that shaft and that fish out, retrieved it, and then from there we continued to do some drifts and came across this doggy. It was my drop. I went down and followed the dogtooth down, and it was swimming up current, and I was swimming down on a 45-degree angle, and I probably got down to about 17 meters, and I could feel the urge I was like, oh, yep, I need to go back up now, the natural urge you get. And I thought, I'm out of range. Well, that's fine. And as I made in my head the decision to come back up, the doggy took a 180-degree turn and started swimming back towards me. The adrenaline overtook, and it hooked me, and I realised how rare of an opportunity I thought at the time that was, and I overcommitted and went back down for the fish. I'd come up to 16 meters, and I went back down to 18, put the shot in, and I'm there on the line. It just head for the reef, and I'm trying to grab a bit of the line, and in that, every movement I'm making, using up precious energy that is essential to getting me to the top. So following that, I don't have much recollection other than as I started to come to the surface, big tingling through the legs, and then I blacked out from there.
What happened from there, Jack?
From my point of view, Aaron, there's nothing better from a Spearo's point of view than when you're watching up the top and your mate lines up to shoot a fish. So as soon as he's lined up, I'm going, please hit, please hit. He's shot the fish, it's taken off, and then his float line and the buoy is just taken off as the doggies do start pulling the floats under. So I've gone over, jumped on the floats, and as I'm getting towed through the water, I then look over to Aaron and notice he's at about 5 metres, on his way up. And then as I'm getting pulled out of the corner of my eye, it catches him what seems like a second later, and he's now at 6 metres. And then that's just triggered in my brain, something's not right. He's not meant to be going sinking underwater. So then I've let go of the float, and he's about 15 metres to my right-hand side. And I've just swum at him, and as I'm swimming towards him, you can see his eyes are rolled in the back of his head, and his face is a little bit bluey purple, even at this stage. And he's just, it looked to me like he was just engulfing, taking big gulps of water. Anyway, I thought that's not normal. I knew what was going on by this stage, grabbed him under the chin and just kicked as hard as I could to get to the surface. And once I got him on the surface, I was then hoping he'd be conscious and there'd be some sort of life, but he was just, as you know, with blackouts and with other people have experienced, there's just it's just a weightless body. So kicking on the surface, I remember it being a real effort to keep him afloat.
Did you dump his belt?
Not at this stage, no. And then just the gargling noise that was coming out of him was just this horrible gargling noise. And then as I took his mask off, his whole face was purple and lips were blue. And then after I held his head up for a little while, I then gave him some big, deep breaths, mouth to mouth on the surface, as we'd called for the boat.
Did he have that big fucking buffy beard when you did that?
I had to part the beard and make my way in. But worked my way in there, which was quite an effort. Got in there and then gave him a big kiss, pretty much of mouth to mouth on the surface.
He'd been waiting about 5 years for that moment at this point.
Yeah, I can see he's got a little bit of a... I better not say that. He's cracking a chubby. Just thinking about it though.
And anyway, it was that good. It brought him back to life. Yeah, he then sort of vomited and spewed up a lot of the salt water that was in his lungs, and we got him in the boat. Yeah, and it was at this stage. This day, the blue water day was firing. There was doggies everywhere. A sailfish had just come through, and we're like, oh shit, we've got to get back to the hospital. And in the boat, whose boat it was, the skipper was going, fuck off, no way, we're leaving. I just saw a sailfish and there's doggies everywhere. And
he's alive, he's right.
He's right, he's come good. But
secondary drowning's a thing, isn't it? That's
exactly right. So I got on the phone to a mum who's a doctor, and I was like, hey mum, Az is blacked out, but she's all good now, isn't he? And she's like, no. Like this whole secondary drowning thing where someone who's got salt water in their lungs then collects too much fluid and then they drown. So then the whole process was we had to got on the phone to emergency services, pinned it back to the closest point of mainland, and then ambulance with lights flashing to the emergency setup, and he was over there overnight, and it was a pretty full-on experience for us.
It sounds full on. I'm going to link up the video on today's show notes, so if people go to noobspearo.com/B2B, that'll be simple, and then I'll link up the video because it's pretty dramatic. And did you guys? I think I read some comments. People accused you guys of staging it.
Did they?
At one stage, I heard that, or I read it. I can't remember, and I was like, "No, you can see that there's nothing. It wasn't organised for a start. Like you swam from 15 off. Like if you're staging that, it'd be bloody, it'd be crazy."
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I don't generally go through any of our comments on YouTube, or I'll do a very brief look and look for anything positive to respond to. But yeah, I'll just put a guarantee out there for anyone watching our shit. It's legit, and we don't put up things that are fake for the purpose of getting called out for not being authentic in what we do, because we love what we do, and like we wouldn't put it out there.
Well, I was reading it, and like you're one of only a very few people that have shared a blackout video, because it's such a like maybe there's an element of shame to it. Like, we've made a mistake and it's something that we should hide. But like, people don't learn if you hide your mistakes, and you lived. So I mean, it's not such a big mistake. It's just a blackout.
No, that's definitely, and the thing we've always said is the only good thing to come out of it is that we were both filming at the same time, and hopefully it could be a lesson to other young Spearos getting into it that don't make the same mistake. It would have been easy for Az to go, I was down at 40 metres and, as I shot this big tuna, a shark came in and I blacked out. But it wasn't the case, and you can then go back and analyse the dive and look at little mistakes that may have led to what happened. And we've had a lot of young Spearos then go, oh, mate, that was great. I didn't know that could happen. Yeah. Thanks, and then you're like, well, that's the purpose. We shared that.
The whole point of sharing it was that if we can get young spearfishermen or people who have been spearfishing for a long time who haven't taken these considerations or thought about what could happen if you're pushing your body or if this happens to one of your friends. And if it didn't feel right of us if we didn't post that footage. It felt, you can't let ego get in the way of helping other people progress through their journey underwater hunting in a safe way, because, if we helped a handful of people after watching that video, and we have personally, like Strick said, message us saying, thank you so much for sharing that, and, having the vulnerability to show such raw footage of something that, and like, this isn't something, it was never, only in the last couple of years, it's been easier for me to talk about. This was something that for a very long time, I had a lot of emotional stress and trauma from. I couldn't I was having nightmares about drowning for months after.
Did it pull the joy out of diving?
No, it took a long time not a long time, 6 to 8 months before I started feeling slightly comfortable again in the water. I felt very stressed. But in the water.
It's certainly changed the way we dive, and it put things into perspective in that no fish is worth your life, because that's what it almost came down to. We were that keen to land a doggy that there was nothing else that'd get in your way. But now, if similar things happen and you're almost out of breath and there's a fish there, just go to the surface, get a breath. The fish will probably still be there. Like, no fish is worth your life.
I feel like people read that and they think it's a cliche, but when you hear a story like that and then you hear that message reinforced, all of a sudden it has a lot more meaning for people. So
yeah, and I honestly do look back at it now after a lot of reflection, and I see it as one of the defining points in my life and one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because when you go that far to the point of no return and you get ripped back, it's as if every day now has been this bonus day, because I could have so easily died that day, or could have so easily, for being unconscious for minutes on end, had serious brain damage. So the fact that I can still dive, I can still communicate, I can still think and function normally after having such a traumatic experience, it made me be incredibly grateful for every single day and really treat it like a gift. And you hear that from, I guess, people who have horrific accidents or car accidents or whatnot. And yeah, it just really makes you reframe what truly matters. And that's like the biggest thing, other than obviously the safety that I've drawn from that incident. Yeah.
So obviously you felt an incredible sense of gratitude. Obviously you were pretty grateful towards Jack as well. Have you had the chance to return serve at some stage, or almost, or?
Oh, in different ways, yeah. We've been through a lot of different adventures, the highest and the lowest that you could go through, and yeah, we've got each other.
Jack mentioned some brothels in Southeast Asia. Is that one of them?
Yeah, look, we don't need to talk about everything on the field or off the field.
Just having a stare.
No, look, you speculate. I'm sure he was probably singing a song or...
Let's get into hunting techniques. Get into some nuts and bolts stuff.
Perfect segue.
Yeah. I'm like that. It's just a gift I have, Favorite species to hunt, and how do you hunt them effectively?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Blackspot Tuskfish, or the blue bone tusky. Yeah, I really enjoy the tusky in that they're not so easy to find. They're dominating. They're very strong when you're getting the larger models. You get them in a range of depths of water, and it's difficult to find and land big ones. And no matter if they're smaller models, around the 3 kilos, or whether they're the larger scale, 10 plus, they're still incredibly good eating. They don't lose any integrity in the quality of flesh. So yeah, I really like Tuskies.
Okay, so finding them. How do you find them?
Find them, I generally look for like rubbly, shoaly, sandy country because they eating up crabs and shells and digging through the sand. So anywhere that's isolated bommies or a bit of rubbly, shoaly country that has broken bits of coral and vast bits of sand through it, and generally off from the main structure. So they won't be directly on the bommy the majority of the time. They'll be 10, 20, 30 metres off, shoaling and scouting the wider proximity of that isolated rock, for instance.
And so you try, once you find this ground, how do you cash in on that?
Yeah, so probably a quarter of the time you might be lucky enough if the visibility is good enough and it's not too deep. If it's not 15, 20 metres, then you might be able to see them from the surface, and then you can go down. Good technique that I like to use is just heading off to the side of a rock and making sure you've got something to hold on to, a little bit of rock or a bit of bottom, and you can hold onto the bottom, get yourself nice and relaxed, tuck that chin in, hit the bottom, and just disguise yourself as a bit of a stingray or a manta ray or a turtle on the bottom that's just feeding, and start scratching yourself a little bit of sand or flicking a little bit of sand and keeping that chin nice and tucked in, and then everything around you will just become more comfortable and think that you're a part of that ecosystem, like a turtle or a manta ray. And then just lifting your mask up, doing a little bit of a scan, and 9 times out of 10, they'll be incredibly curious and come right in on you and give you a nice broadside shot. And shot placement's really important, especially with the bigger models, that you're not shooting them too high or too low, because they're such a strong fish. They'll quite often mutilate themselves to get off that shaft, and you might see them swim away if you've shot them too high with a big rip through the back of the neck, even if you've shot 1.5 inches below the top. So shot placement's crucial, and I like shooting them on a 45-degree angle instead of straight side on. Otherwise, they can quite simply rip a good hole and get out.
Scales, I guess, are a big one too sometimes.
Big scales, yeah. Make sure your tip's sharp. Don't go shooting rocks beforehand, and make sure you got a lot of power and punch to hit and get through those thick scales and out the other side.
You like shooting them in the head?
I shoot just back from the head. Yeah, bit back, like down. Like you don't want to go through the gill plates, but just above like the gill plates, like behind the eye. Obviously, it's good to go for the stone shot and put them to sleep.
Most of us don't do that with central body mass. Boom.
Yeah, boom. Yeah, and because they've got such nice fillets, you don't want to just go straight smack bang. I'm getting more selective with that as I've gotten older through spearing.
You guys have put some fish on the boat in the last few days. Consistently, you've done well.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been diving. We've been working for them. Yeah.
I haven't seen any Blackspot Tuskfish come over. Did you get one?
We've got 2.
Oh, 2. Oh,
didn't see the 8 kilo model that came over on the second day.
I think it was 7.6.
It'll be 9 by the end of the trip.
Oh, good stuff. And Jack, you had a species you like to hunt?
Yeah, the species. We spent a bit of time with them today. The green jobfish are one of my favourite fish to hunt for a few different reasons. First of all, they're very challenging. It's not often you don't just come across a silly jobfish. And the other reason is they really, when you're hunting them, they respond to your every movement. So say if you swim at them a metre, they'll generally move a metre. Or if you look at them, they'll do a certain thing. If you look away, they'll do a certain thing. So especially when you're on the bottom hunting them, every move you make, it's almost like this dance, the jobby dance. They will make a responsive move, and it's then trying to get them where you want them to shoot them.
That's what Zach said to me when he got up. He's like, "Oh, yeah, little dance there."
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it? You make a move, and then the jobby will make a move. So I love hunting them. There's generally, from my experience, I reckon there's 2 kind of different scenarios you'll find green jobfish in, and one is when you're out in the blue water and you're burling up, they just can't resist the burley. So as soon as you start chumming up a little bit on a drop off, quite generally the green jobfish will come in and eat the burley. They're pretty quick through the burley, and that's one of probably the easier ways to shoot a really big one as well. And once they're in the burley, one of the approaches that I like to do is you'll see them sort of chewing through and making their way around the burley trail. I dive away from the burley trail and then sort of aim up at a piece of burley that he hasn't yet got, but you think he's going to eventually make his way to. And then as soon as he turns towards that bit, just race him to that burley. So swim quickly at it, and he almost gets in a competition with you to swim further at it and think he's going to beat you to it. Because you see them competing with sharks and that kind of stuff. So that's how we started doing this. So they'll actually accelerate towards the burley once you move towards it. And then, move towards it, aim up at that bit of burley, just wait for him to open his mouth. And as he eats it, bang, that's when you aim to take the shot. So that's one scenario is on the burley. And then the second is where you're just through the lagoon hunting on sand or even a reef edge. And this is the way I like hunting them, because you really, without the burley there, you've actually got to earn the fish in your dive. So with this approach, I like to make a dive, and if you can find a little bit of shelter on the bottom, whether it's underneath a little cave or beside a rock, camouflage yourself in, and then just flick a little bit of sand up or scratch the coral, and this is where they'll then swim towards you, and you see that gnarly chin of theirs with the teeth out swimming right at you. And you almost get so excited on the bottom that it's working, but you've got to hold your position for, a little bit longer to allow them to come in. So, I love doing that. And then that's where I was talking about with the whole dance. Every move you make, if you lift yourself too quickly, they'll spook. So you've got to really think about your movements with that. And if you can land one that way, I think that's an awesome fish to get.
It's really cool when they're coming in at you and then they jam on the brakes. When they flare those fins and they just turn on a dime, they look amazing. And I don't know, it's hard to describe how cool they look. They can just turn on nothing. Yeah,
and they get that sort of green pulse of colour as they turn. Their dorsal fin comes up, their teeth go out. Yeah,
they're a tough looking fish, and they're weird because they're not really a reefy and they're not a pelagic. They're just kind of something in between.
We'll get one tomorrow, mate. We had a fair bit of fun hunting them today over a couple of drifts. Yeah, well, they were keeping their distance, but Isaac, you got a shot into one of them.
Yeah, I got a shot into one and I buggered one up. Zach was watching. I dropped down and this thing was right there, and I knew he wasn't going to keep going, so I've just sort of buggered off in another direction. Got down and he's swimming off, and then I've thrown 2 handfuls of sand and he's spun right around and come in at me. And then I've chucked up another handful of sand to further entice him, and he hated that. He just spun around and took off.
Well, it's similar to a dance, isn't it? You might throw a hand up somewhere and it's just don't get the right response, and off the job he goes.
I asked him for a dance and he said no.
He said no, thanks.
That was it. Yeah, but no. And then I put a shot in another one as well, but it was a smaller model, but tore off on the way up, which was a bit disappointing. Need to work on my marksmanship as well. It was cool. It was one of those days where it didn't quite work for me, but it left me frothing for tomorrow. You know what I mean? Sometimes those days, and then your mind turns over how could I do that better? So
yeah, and then when you do everything you want to do better on a dive, when you're going to hit that big dive and play with the sand on the bottom and then land that jobby, it makes it all that more rewarding, don't you think?
Have you tried sound on jobby, making sounds in your throat, or?
I often like doing a bit of. I'll make a few trevally-like sounds under the water. I occasionally do that, and also I'll strum the rubber.
That initial investment you make in your spearfishing gear does take a long time to often see fruit. It's expensive to get started, and that's why we've partnered up with spearfishing.com.au. You can head over to spearfishing.com.au and use the code NoobSpearo to save money on equipment. It's a fantastic place to get started. They've got huge brands like Rob Allen, Rife, Picasso, Salvamar, Spora, Shea, Shark Shield and more. Not only do they have a huge range, but they've got 70 passionate people in store that can help you choosing the right equipment. It's a huge investment to get started spearfishing, and whether you're in the process of buying your first bunch of equipment or you're wanting to upgrade one component of your gear like a wetsuit or a spear gun, spearfishing.com.au can help you. Use the code NoobSpearo, save $20 on every purchase over $200. Thanks for supporting the No Spearo podcast and shopping with spearfishing.com.au. I wanted to move into Veterans Vault, and today's topic is quite intriguing, I think. Whoever thought of it was absolutely very clever, I think. Yep. But it was the transferable skills from line fishing to spearfishing, and then vice versa, full circle from spearfishing back to line fishing. Because you guys do a lot of both, don't you? And you seem equally passionate about it.
Yeah, definitely love both of them. Both got a time and a place, and we seem to go through phases where 1 month all we want to do is spear, and then the next month we're on to catching a certain species on line. So yeah, we love both of it. For me personally, how line fishing helped my spear fishing was when I was younger. You're 4, 5, 6. You start getting your first books. I was just an absolute fish nerd. I had got Grant's Guide to Fishers and just read it back to front and knew every species, where they were, their size limits and their scientific name. And so then when I got into the fishing came from that. When I got into the spear fishing, I already knew all the species, which one were desirable, which one were no take. And, a lot of people that get into spearfishing, they say, we had a guy on board, Ryan, he's a gun diver, and he said, today I swam past an 8-kilo mangrove jack because I didn't know it was a mangrove jack. So I guess that kind of scenario I had, I was lucky in that I knew all the fish and where to catch them on a line really helps you spearing. You're aware of certain currents and certain depths of certain fish. So that's what helped. Definitely from the line fishing into the spearing, I sort of had almost a bit of a head start in that, I thought.
Appreciation for structure as well. And
yeah, definitely. Yeah. A structure on where certain fish hang on the reef because you've been fishing there online and you caught them repetitively. So, definitely certain structures and currents of a reef for sure.
So you guys, I think one of the biggest things with spearfishing is opportunity. Like you can have all the hunting techniques in the world, but if you're in the wrong place, they're not going to do jack shit. So you've still got to figure out where to go and what you're likely to be targeting. You guys seem to be pretty good at that side of things. Do you think some of that is from line fishing, or is it from both? Or
yeah, thanks for the question. So to give context, similar to Strick, I grew up. It was just fishing. I didn't really know about spearing. It was just on the weekends or after school, I'd be chasing jungle perch, sooty grunter, barra, mangrove jacks up at our farm or in the freshwater creeks or going beach fishing for whiting and flathead. And like Strick, just loved it and was like learning about where the fish were and what they were doing. But I was very fortunate to have my grandfather and my uncle who were commercial fishermen. So their livelihoods just relied on knowing where to go and when to get what fish. And that was the biggest transferable skill for me from going from fishing to spearfishing, which I think for many people is the natural progression, becoming more curious and wanting to see what's underwater and go into that element of selective hunting. But it was getting to know and learn what the best time is for getting what and when and where. So from a young age, I was told to keep my eyes open and observe. I constantly needed to be observing. What's the temperature? Is the day overcast? What time of the day is it? What time of the year is it? Has there been a lot of rain? What's the moon phase? What's the tide doing? Why are there a lot of bait jumping on the beach today? Is it a good time for catching mud crabs? There'd be times of the year where the weather was amazing and I'd go when I was younger, can we go catch some mud crabs? And my granddad's like, forget about it. It's not the time. He said there's a time for everything, and their lives very much progressed because they lived off a primary industry, fishing and farming. There was a time of the year for everything. There's a time of the year for propagating and striking your seeds. There's a time of the year for planting. There's a time of the year for mackerel. There's a time of the year for crayfish. There's a time of the year for everything. So that was one thing I learned. So when I started spearing, I had a better understanding of this time of the year, I shouldn't go out for mackerel because there's a very little chance there'll be a lot of quality mackerel and I'll be wasting time, but it could be a better time of the year for coral trout and crayfish up on the shallower reefs. So, yeah.
I have a real appreciation for what you're saying. I go out hunting and stay on a farmer's property, and you learn more in 3 hours just listening to him talk about his farm and how the land works and the cycles and the seasons play out. And I guess out on the ocean with commercial fishermen, people that do it for a living, it's the same thing. They just observe every day and they know, I see that means this, that means that.
Yeah, constantly. And I remember when I was younger, some of my earliest memories when I was a young teenager, 11, 12, 13, going out with my granddad to the reef, and in my head, I still can picture the big adventure. It was like, whoa, it was the early, dark, winter, cold mornings, and we're heading out to the reef to get mackerel, and you got all the big outriggers on the side, and like helping load the ice up. Your little scrawny 12-year-old getting the gear in, and then as you're heading out, hit my granddad to go, all right, you drive, and he'd sort of lay up. He's in his late 70s by that point, and he's put his feet up in the back, and I'd go, oh, which way do I go? Can you plot a course for me on the plotter? And he'd go, see that peg hanging at the back on the rope? Line that up with that mountain ridge. All right, what's the time? 40 minutes, sit it on 20 knots. When it's 40 minutes, take it out of gear. Sure enough, 40 minutes, keeping that peg lined up with a certain mountain ridge. We'd pull up, and he's like, all right, put the lines in. Within 5 minutes, you catch a mackerel. So it was reframing your mind to think, all right, really just observe, keep looking at everything. Like you said, when you're on the land, you got to take in what's around you.
I didn't grow up in Australia, and so learning species here for me was really intimidating, and it's still a bugbear of mine. And people say study books and stuff, and I mean that's what I do, but you look at Grant's Guide to Fishes, and it's like you pay attention to sort of maybe 3 or 4 at a time, and you learn about them, and then you sort of put it down and forget about it for a while. And it's not until you've had another issue that you go, oh, I better get back into the fish again. It's a slow way to accumulate your knowledge of species.
And definitely, a lot of the species will look a hell of a lot different to they do in a fish book once you see them underwater. And quite often, the way to ID, say, a coral trout is not because of its colours. It's not orange with blue spots underwater. It's whereabouts it's sitting on a certain bommy, and the way it moves underwater, and the general shape and its characteristics.
The varieties of trout.
That's right. Yeah. And you don't see that in the fish book. You've got to get underwater and kind of almost ask all those questions yourself and see how the fish move and behave, and then you can then from then pick up the species, I think.
What about rigging? Rigging from line fishing and being out in the ocean, you would have had your head around a lot of the knots and stuff we use. Yeah,
it's general handy, and you also have a good idea of different fish's characteristics. So with the Spanish mackerel, for example, they've got big teeth, and they're predatory fish. So you then say, oh, if we're rigging for this, we want a flasher in the water because we know they're going to be feeding like this, and like if you're shooting wahoo that are really fast fish, you say we're going to want more stretch in our float lines because from catching them on line, we know they're really fast. So there's these kind of things. Just knowing the more about the fish and the species then can allow you to rig your gear properly.
Yeah, my biggest message would be testing all of your gear, and that was something that we did when we were connecting braid to leader or leader to hooks or lures. Is that you'd give it a big and you'd really put it to the test as if a fish was going to hit that and strike. So same thing when we're doing all of our spear gears or floats, lines, rubbers, whatever it is. I'm big time testing them. Testing them further than what I think they would go in the heat of battle.
Yeah, nice. What about full circle? Like a lot of Spearos some of them come from line fishing, and then they weren't even that successful at line fishing. They get to spearfishing, they're like, it's going to be shooting fish in a barrel. And they get in, and maybe they do find some success after some time. A lot of them don't make a full circle back to line fishing. They sort of lose that first passion. But you guys haven't.
Yeah, a lot of people get into the spearing, and then it's kind of this us versus them mentality of, oh, we're Spearos, and we don't go into the line fishing. But yeah, like you said, I love both of it. I find it really complements my line fishing after having done a bit of spearfishing, and exactly where the fish are from seeing them underwater on dives to where you can then find them by looking at them on a sounder. You say, oh, well, I know exactly that's a coral trout here because it's sitting right at the front edge of the bommy. This will be a nanny guy because it's 5 meters above the bottom, and then you can then rig your baits accordingly and drop right where the fish are and the fish are feeding. And the biggest giveaway from that, in a lot of people who are just general fishermen, say if they find a bommy the size of your general living room, they just, all right, no worries, drop your line on any side of that bommy and you hope for a bit of luck. But from swimming it, that all the fish that are feeding, they're sitting on the up current side, the pressure side, and all the bait fish are there, the coral trout, the trevally, and the whole feeding cycle. So you imagine a bait sitting at the back edge of that, from spearfishing, there's just no fish there. So
do Moses perch and jacks break that rule? Do they like sitting out of the current sometimes? What do you guys think about this stuff? I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, the exception to like the pressure point rule of them all holding up current is the fish that are in a cave that are actually sheltering and hiding from the caves on the back of the rock, while all the other fish will move around the full 360 of the rock to follow the current. The fish in the cave will just stay in the cave no matter where the current's at. Yeah. And those jacks, they won't hold out in the current like a coral trout would.
So they feed predominantly, do you think, on bait inside these caves?
Yeah, if you stick your head in any of those caves, it's hard to see to the back of the cave because there's all that what we call white bait. It's just the size of your pinky, and all the fish in there has to do is just open their mouth, and then they get this full mouthful.
Is this the dumbest bait ever? But it's like they don't have any other option, I think.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of line fishermen, very, very rarely catch big jacks out at the reef. It's kind of only on a certain moon, and I've heard from a lot of people who know what they're talking about. An hour bite window in a certain depth of water, you might get a few big ones. But when we're spearing, they're quite often a lot of the fish we enjoy targeting the most. Those nice big reef jacks.
Because we like getting into their homes and
knock.
Disrupting their peace. Hello.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Strick said there. And the only thing I'd add to that is that one thing we love doing when we go out for a day or a weekend on the reef or camping on a beach somewhere, and we're gonna have the opportunity to go out and have a spear, is we like to be ready for anything. So we'd like to have a dilly or a crab pot, and we'd like to have a popping rod and a soft plastic flicking rod or a jigging rod, so that in the morning when you go out, there's different times of the day that are better suited to different things. So first up in the morning, it'd be great to cast over some bommies or do some jigging or some trolling along a hard edge for some Spanish mackerel. So nice to pick up a mackerel or two in the morning on the troll, and then go for a dive for a few hours, and as the tide, say, drops and it becomes low around lunch, then you can go into the shallows and have some lunch, jump over, try to get a couple of crays, and then while you're out there, have a bit of a pop for some GTs in the shallows or some trout, some Spangled Emperor, whatever's around, and also too for the boatie, because we never anchor up the boat. We've always got someone in the boat. They'll often like to just do wide circles around us and troll, or have a bit of a jig, and quite often the boys will be in the water and then someone in the boat's going, "Hey, hurry up, boys, I'm getting trout." They're just throwing trout in the boat, getting them on the jig. So yeah, we always like to keep one in there, just to wherever the day's taking you, be ready.
And the other reason we enjoy both covering the line fishing and the spearing is that, especially here in Australia, some species that are great fun to catch on the line we don't enjoy targeting them on the spear because we're quite selective with what we spear. So an example of that's the big GTs. Love catching them on a popper. That's just adrenaline packed, great fun. But I wouldn't want to pull the trigger on one here in Australia where they're not great eating, and we kind of enjoyed targeting other tastier species better. So you can catch the fish and release it and appreciate the fish and the challenge and the fight and everything without having to kill the fish.
The battle of wits too, I think.
Yeah. They generally come out on top.
The fishes and Spearos all have that in common. That's the novelty of the chase and the figuring it out and feeling like I've got this thing right. And when it all comes together, it's really satisfying, I think.
Yeah, or on the opposite side of that, like going back to the drawing board. Oh, where did we go wrong today? Surely all the stars were aligned, and then you come home scratching your head with 10 lures down.
It sounds like you guys sort of enjoy the novelty of it, like trying and experimenting with new things. And
yeah, love learning, and also just the places that it takes us. For instance, with the likes of the fishing, you can go right up into Cape York and chase Saratoga. It's prehistoric, incredible looking fish, and getting a fish is always a bonus. It's just being out there surrounded by untouched raw nature, or the likes of spearing, going to remote locations through Australia or the South Pacific searching for wahoo and dogtooth tuna. So it's the places and the people that you meet on the journey of it.
Hey, Zach, have you got the Fahrenheit and Celsius comparison there? If you look it up, just can you tell us what 24 degrees is in Fahrenheit, just so I can make a joke for the listeners? But advice for Spearos that don't line fish, and advice for line fishers that don't spearfish. Every line fisher I chat with says, "Oh no, I've seen what comes out of there. I'm not getting in." The men in grey suits hold a lot of fear for a lot of line fishers, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the most well-travelled commercial fishermen we know and have spoken to, these guys have seen it all on the ocean. They say, "You guys are bloody mad for jumping in there. The shark's in there." And then when we come back with some of the stories about, losing fish to big sharks and all this kind of thing, it just
Confirms everything.
It confirms everything. It further adds to their fear. So I guess a bit of advice, but, very rarely do any actual, shark attacks happen. The whole fear is a lot more dramatic than the reality underwater. So advice from a Spearo to a fisherman is that not all the sharks are going to eat you. Jump in there, interact with them.
It's another thing to learn, isn't it? How to interact with them.
Yeah. Definitely, and not to be terrified of them. We swim with them all day, every day, and very rarely does it ever call for a time to be terrified. So,
I'm pretty sure 24 degrees is over 70 Fahrenheit, and I just wanted to point out the fact that you guys are in 5mm wetsuits, and for me this is absolutely balmy. And here's you guys the Shivering Dingoes is the name of your vessel down here.
All right, so Shivering Dingo, very apt name for our crew and our vessel. We come from far north Queensland, and we dive the likes of Papua New Guinea and Vanuatu, generally warmer waters up around the 27 to 30 degree mark. I prefer being toasty, warm, hot. I've got a 5mm wetty on here on the Southern Great Barrier Reef. What's it been sitting on?
24, 23,
24 to 23. So I'm still a little bit cool. Like I'm getting flushes of water, and when I get out of the boat and the wind hits me, I'm going, oh, lucky I'm not in anything less than a 5mm.
No, it hasn't been super warm, but I've been in a 3mm closed cell suit and I've been fine. But obviously we're diving down in 19, 20 degree water at the moment.
Just not used to it. Just not used to it. We're normally used to diving in boardies and a rashy top or a 1.5mm top, and rarely having bottoms on. And
advice the other way from line fishers to Spearos.
Oh, it's just at the end of the day, it's what you're into. Yeah. If you go out and you do what you love, whether it's fishing, whatever type of fishing, whatever type of spearing you're hunting and you're doing, as long as you're not getting in anyone's way, hurting the environment, pissing anyone off, recognize that we're all there to be in the outdoors, and that life is full on for a lot of people. And life, everyone's working hard, and a lot of people, I know many of, like myself and many mates, use spearing and fishing and going on these outdoor adventures as a release, as therapy. So understand that a lot of people, everyone's fighting this battle you very much know nothing about. So when you see people out there, if they're frustrated or they have a go at you, maybe reframe it and go, you know what, they probably haven't had a fucking shit week. They probably had a really full-on week, and they're out there just having a fish and trying to get a feed, and
probably got a lot in common with yourself. So
yeah, exactly.
You should be friends.
Yeah, and then a lot of the time I've found that if you met at the boat ramp before you went out or when you came back, other than maybe in the heat of battle out on the water fighting over a spot or a bommy or a ledge or a wreck, you'd be high-fiving and bum-tapping and hugging and being best mates. There'd be no 1.5 meters. You'd be good mates. So just understand that everyone's out there to have a great time.
That was an awesome Veterans Vault, boys. Any parting comments with the line fishing, spearfishing dichotomy?
No, they both complement each other. Yeah, and if you haven't tried the other one, get into it. Yeah, you'll learn more. You'll be a better Spearo. You'll have a greater knowledge of the whole sport, which we enjoyed.
And for line fishermen, we touched on it, but a lot of very reluctant, because they've seen or heard these stories about big sharks or big crocs or big jellyfish or big stingrays, but just start out in really, the protection of an island, really clean, snorkeling, and just see how it goes. Feel it out. Start small.
Let's move into scary stories. You just mentioned crocs, so I'm intrigued. Have you guys had some experience with them?
So now to scare all the line fishers off that we're just trying to get into the sport.
That's it.
Yeah, I can give you a croc story. Got two stories. Once I was driving for my mate, and we're hunting crays coastally up in far north Queensland, down near Mission Beach, and we were near the mouth of a river, but I knew that near that mouth there was some sort of rubbly bottom, couple of small, low isolated bommies that you can rarely get them clean. Many times of the year, one of those spots, and maybe a handful of times. And I was like, today's probably going to be clean enough. So I took him over there, dropped him on the rock, and it's probably 6 meters deep. And he went down, sort of did a loop, and then he just hit the surface and launched in the boat, because I had the boat really close, knowing that it was a little bit of a high risk area.
That's why he's in the water and not you.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, sorry, Lexi. Big Sexy. Yeah, so it was our mate Lex, who we grew up diving with. And yeah, he jumped in the boat and his face was white and he was like, croc, croc, croc. And I'm like, what, you're right. And he's like, he just swam around the side of this rock and just came face to face, probably meter and a half viz, with a massive tail, like big, gnarly croc tail laying on the sandy rubble. So that was one encounter. And then the other encounter in the water was I was diving the back of a stinger net it was probably just after February, like when the barra season opens. Occasionally you'll get barramundi on the outskirts around the footings for these stinger nets. And these stinger nets, for people who've never heard of them before, is basically a little protective area that's meshed off with a big float around it to stop box jellies and blue bottles coming through, so it's safe to swim through summer in far north Queensland. But I was swimming around the back of it. The viz was probably, that coastally meter and a half viz, all sandy bottom. And I was swimming on the outskirts, and occasionally you'll get finger mark jacks, flathead, barras, like probably 5 or 10 meters behind the net. So I was coming up to the corner of the net where is generally a bit of a pressure point, and there'll be bait hanging. And I hit the bottom probably 15 meters before to try and do the stealth approach along the bottom. And I'm just slowly kicking along the edge of the net, and I'm seeing shadows, and I had a little 90 roller, and I'm just scanning it, ready, finger ready, and then I'm seeing bait flicking, and then I just came to the end, and it was quite silty, and I just saw this big log, Black Az, laying on the bottom. I'm going, oh, maybe there'll be something along the side of it. And as I got closer, I started running out of breath, and I'm like, okay, I'll come up. And as I started coming up, I was still angling towards it, and probably a meter off, I realized it was a croc just laying on the sand, probably 7 foot, 8 foot, so not a monster, but a bit longer than myself. And just my heart, just dropped. And as I started reaching the surface, probably 3 or 4 meters deep, it went out of sight. So I hit the surface and the croc vanished, and it was just all silty brown around me. So just being on the top of the water and knowing that there's a croc laying just below you within a few meters was and it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't being gnarly, but they're unpredictable, and they've just got such a prestige around him. And luckily my brother was probably 100 meters away in the tinny, and I just jack, and he whipped around. I launched in the boat, and he said, there was a croc there, wasn't there? And I said, yeah, man. He said, you wouldn't have been yelling like that if there wasn't. Could be the only thing. So yeah.
Takeaways. Like, obviously it sounds like there's some areas where you've just got to avoid.
Yeah, it's getting far, far more risky coastal diving in a lot of North Queensland. It really is, and you just need to understand as well time of the year. Like in winter, crocodiles are a lot less likely to be active. They're not mating anymore. They're not breeding. They're generally got a lot slower metabolism. They're not feeding as much, so it's safer in that sense. But in summer, especially after big rain, after a lot of rain, crocs will be pushed out of the estuaries and the river systems and the swamps, and they'll be cruising along feeding on all the bait and the mud crabs and the barras that are sitting along the coastline. So yeah, just because you think, it's clean now after all that rain, just be really mindful that good chance that there could be a croc. And one piece of advice I was given from an old Spearo way back in the day, he said, and he'd dive a lot of Cooktown and north of Cooktown, and he said if he ever got to a rock or a headland where there wasn't one bit of life, not microbait, not bigger fish, medium fish, there was nothing, he'd get out. Because he said that is often a sign that there is a croc in the area. So I don't know how much truth to bring out of that up, but it's something that's stuck in my head.
Have you ever wanted to build your very own DIY wooden spear gun? Fantastic bit of news for you. Episode 123 of the New Spearo podcast is with Killshot Spear Guns craftsman Ed Martin. And if you listen to that podcast and visit neptonics.com, the spear gun builder section, you will find a recipe to create your fish killing machine, and it'll have your stamp on it, no one else's. So visit neptonics.com, go to the spear gun builder page, and listen to episode 123 of the New Spearo podcast with Killshot Spear Guns craftsman Ed Martin. It's a recipe for success. It'll save you some pain on the learning curve and hopefully inspire a magical weapon of death where you can just slay fish galore. Simple, accurate, deadly. Use the code NOOB, N-O-O-B, and save $30 on any spear gun for a limited time only. Go to killshotspearguns.com, check them out for yourself. Handmade in the Florida Keys by Ed Martin. Use the code NOOB, N-O-O-B, or head into the shop and say, "Crikey, mate." And apparently Ed will hook you up with a $30 discount on any timber spear gun. Get your hands on one. Killshotspearguns.com. Okay, cool. All right, we're moving on. Jack's scary stories. What do we got?
Scary stories. I haven't swum with a crocodile yet. I say yet because it's
Something to look forward to.
It's only a matter of time. But just reiterating what Az said, there's some areas, a lot of the spots I dive off Townsville is I'll only dive them at certain times of the year because of the crocodiles. So, during the summer months where they're active and they're going through the breeding stages, you'd be mad to dive these spots. But come the winter time when it's all cooled down and they're just laying on the mud bunks, you can get in with no worries thus far. But a scary moment would probably be there's been a few different shark yarns, but one that happened quite recently and was probably the biggest adrenaline rush was when we were in Samoa running a Pacific tour in Samoa. We're out on this area here. We took a fair bit of pioneering, and we one of the local blokes who'd been around the boats in the area his whole life, he said, no one has ever swum out here, in the history of Samoa. Like, this is as remote a place as you could ever think of diving, which was awesome. But we got in the water and just put, as you do when you're blue water spearing, you put a heap of burley into the water. So all the frames from some nice doggies the day before we're putting 3 or 4 doggy frames in the water and just making it absolutely rain with chum. And then it was fairly quiet. Nothing had happened. And the guys love eating rainbow runner. So a rainbow runner came in down at the bottom of the burley trail. So I dove down, and as I dove down, I had a doggy frame in my left hand as I was lining up to shoot the rainbow runner in my right hand. And this all seemed normal because it's kind of what we do all the time. But I'm lining up the rainbow runner to shoot, and just as I pull the trigger, I kind of peek to my left, and out of the corner of my eye, this it was like the size of a school bus shark. And the thing that got me was how quick it came in. Like we had 40 meters visibility there, really clear water, and it was on the edge of visibility. And then within, boom, it was at me, and so quick and so powerful. And the size of it was what got me as well. It was huge. It was a big bull shark, and it came in eyes. As when you know a shark is about to bite something, it rolls this mucous membrane over its eye. Basically, goes in blind for the last meter. That's when you know it's about to bite. And I saw its mucous membrane rolled over. This all happens in a split second, but it's jaws open, snapping at me. And then as it was right on me, the rainbow runner kicked in front of me as I'd just taken the shot on the rainbow runner. And this shark then veered off from me and hit the rainbow runner, 30 centimeters in front of my face, like on me. And while that all happened, you don't have the chance to move, blink. It's just happened so quick.
Did you get footage?
No, we didn't. It just happened so quick that we normally only had footage on when it was going to be a hot session or someone shot a fish or saw a big doggy came in. But this happened. It was literally like lightning how fast it came in, because I was on the top with Kahu, one of the boys we were diving with, legend. Love you, Kahu. And we were both there next to each other, shoulder to shoulder. Strick was at the bottom of the flasher, and we saw out of the depths this shark coming in, and just something, a flick, just switched, just bang, it just went on so quick, and it was just, I thought he was going to get nailed. I was looking at him going, fuck, I'm about to watch Strick get nailed by a shark, and we're going, but it happened in a second. Like what Strick explained was just lightning fast. But luckily he didn't get nailed, hey?
Yeah, well, that's good. And we've had a lot of shark interactions where they, hear a shark buzzing someone. It comes in and gives you a bit of a run around. This wasn't buzzing. This was coming in to eat and attack, and like it was in that mode, which was just after I kind of survived. I was like, that was just so impressive to see an apex predator in that mode, like, and how defenseless anything else would be in its way. Yeah, it was full on.
Was that playing on your mind for a while?
Yeah. Oh, well, that night, quite. I didn't want to tell everyone because I didn't want to be dramatic or anything. I kind of kept it pretty quiet. But that night, lying in bed, I had a lot of like these flashbacks, and you kind of had this moment reality check on your life and where you're at and what you've achieved and your loved ones and all these kind of, you know, really personal thoughts that people talk about this after near-death experiences and that kind of stuff. And I had this most euphoric night afterwards thinking about, you know, and I ended some relationships that night that you know weren't doing well for me, and I, you know, strengthened some, and I really prioritised and made me appreciate the people I did have and who mattered.
I thought it was just island fever that he sort of snuck under the sheets and started to throw a leg. Hey, how's your boy? Come in nice and close, like.
Couple of coconut shells of carver helped there.
Is that all it takes for you, buddy? Eh?
Oh, that's it, mate. Not much.
Nah. A near-death experience and a bit of carver, eh?
Yeah.
That's the secret.
That's the secret, yep. Just jump out of the way of a bus and then get on the carver and you'll have a wonderful night at the end of it.
Yeah, I've got on the carver a few times, actually. It's a different experience, that one.
It's its own thing, isn't it? And it's hard to describe to someone.
Well, it tastes like shit.
Oh, it tastes rubbish.
Mud water. And different carvers, you can often feel a different effect.
Yeah, I had the Tongan stuff, and then they were talking all about the Fijian stuff, and maybe...
You got to have that strong shit.
You got to get on the Vanuatu stuff.
Yeah.
No, but the whole idea of carver, apart from drinking a muddy root, which is absolutely disgusting, the idea of it and where it originated from was if two villages next to each other had a feud between them, then the two chiefs would get together, have a couple of shells of this carver, and anything that was once an issue is just problem solved, and they go on living their merry life.
One thing that's coming through loud and clear is you guys have had a few near-death experiences between you.
Yeah, we could write a novel on it.
The lifestyle you've chosen definitely seems to lend to it, that's for sure.
Our mums aren't too impressed. They don't like getting phone calls at odd hours, that's for sure.
Tell me a little bit about Back to Basics. Where did the concept come from? And what is it about?
Yeah, so you asked at the start of the conversation, which we skipped on, but how Strick and I met. We met in Brisbane at college, and it was a time in our lives where we felt, I think both without knowing it at the time, very out of place with where we were, because Strick had grown up Sunshine Coast, Samoa, Papua New Guinea, and me in the bush and up the farm in far north Queensland. And we'd come to the city because we thought, oh, yep, got to get a degree, you go to uni and that's what you do. And then I think I went past your room one day in college, and I saw all over his wall was photos, and there was lots of photos of catching fish and crays, and thank you. And yeah, we got conversation started about, our backgrounds and what we're into, and he said, oh man, I grew up on, I grew up here, and my dad was a commercial fisherman, and I spent a year after school working on Dunk Island, which Dunk Island was the island off where I'd lived. And we figured we had a mutual friend, Zach, and they knew each other. So I was like, oh, this dude, we obviously have a lot of common ground. And we obviously hit it off by sharing stories about far north Queensland and how beautiful the lifestyle was, and all the things we were into was very mutual. And then every chance we got, when we weren't at uni, even when we were probably meant to be at uni a lot of the time, we'd be off at Moreton Island. We bought a little tinny and a motor that we kept moored up out in the Brizzy River, and we'd go surfing and wakeboarding on sunset, and we'd constantly have to bail it out, and the motor would cut out and you'd sink to the Brizzy bottom of the river. And we were just doing all this like fun outdoor stuff and throwing crab pots in the Brizzy River, and always trying to get down to Byron or anywhere in nature that we could find solace in and connect with nature. And then we always, something we always said, and something I always said as well growing up with my brother, was just, man, we've got to get back to basics. Like you'd just get caught in the thick of it, and you'd be on the phone and the laptop and all the things and money and just all the bombardment and the clutter of life. And I go, fuck, man, we just got to get back to basics. Strip it all back, get back to basics. And yeah, that's, I guess, where it started. We'd always just be going back and forth, going, man, look, what are we doing this weekend? We're getting back to basics. And we just make a little plan and go out and started filming it and taking photos.
And then while we're at Brisbane at uni, a lot of our mates and the circle of friends that we hung out with were all on weekends writing himself off at the pub, and which is fine. There's all time and a place for that.
We weren't impartial to.
Yeah, which, there's time and a place. But we'd be most of the time out camping and exploring Moreton Island or Straddie, and then we'd come back and we'd show these photos to our mates that are lying in bed with this horrible hangover after a 3-day bender. And they're going, geez, you blokes are so lucky you've been out there. And, and then it kind of... we came up with this idea of, sharing the adventures and showing that there's no luck involved. Anyone can get out there with a cheap tinny, or there's all these accessible adventures right on your doorstep. You just got to sort of get into it and get out there, and that's kind of how it all started.
Bit of know-how and probably a lot of resilience and just an attitude of I'm just going to give this a crack as well, probably.
Yeah, and most of the time, just give it a crack, I reckon, is the go. And if you fail, you learn something, and they're always the best adventures, which we laugh about now. And our best trips have been where everything's gone wrong. That's all part of it.
So did you guys were spearing in Brisbane as well?
Yeah, spearing, absolutely. Yeah,
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it made us a hell of a lot better divers because we were spoilt coming spearing the reefs of North Queensland, where you swim 10 metres and shoot a heap of trout, and you think you're a gun Spearo, and then down to Brisbane, and all of a sudden you've got to dive to a lot deeper depths, even to have an opportunity at fish. So, we got humbled pretty quickly there and realised we had to become better divers, which we did in that Brisbane sunny coast area.
Did you guys do courses?
Following the incident of my blackout and a few other situations, Strick had already done a level 1 freediving course in Koh Tao in Thailand, and I'd never done any freediving courses, but following that, we've done freediving courses up to a level 3, and I've done my instructors as well. So, yeah, we spent a lot of time after that, YouTube, reading up, talking to doctors, talking to physios, talking to old Spearos, talking to scuba divers, freediving instructors.
Has there been any resources that have sort of helped you guys along the way, or people you'd recommend with your freediving journeys?
Yeah, the biggest for me has been Adam Stern, and he is not only a great mentor in freediving, but a good friend.
He's a rad dude, isn't he?
Yeah, rad dude.
He's just a good chat too. Like.
Have you had him on here yet?
Yeah. But only recently. But jeepers, he's a funny bugger.
Oh, he's the man. But what's also so good with him is he's so childish, no ego, all funny, but he's all knowledge. So if you start getting into the nitty gritty of freediving,
he dispelled some of my ideas.
He's passionate and curious. He constantly finds out more of his craft.
Yeah. Like his myth busting approach is good. Like like putting on his YouTube channel, he's got people. He's putting them under the MRI and watching how it all works and stuff, and the things they thought that were doing weren't necessarily so. So it was really cool to have a look and see it broken down.
Yeah, love Adam, and he loves an adventure as well. He's got a very adventurous spirit.
He's dropped some knowledge bombs over time.
Yeah, definitely Adam Stern would be probably the key one for me. But then also just reframing myself from the knowledge I was getting off certain videos on YouTube and just reading up more about the body and how everyone's so very different as well. And every day, every dive you do is different. You can't class how you are the same on every day. You can't think that you can perform the same every day because the night before you might have had a few drinks, or you might be dehydrated for some reason, or you mightn't have had much sleep. Or
what's your guys' prep for a good dive day?
Oh, what I'm meant to do and what I actually do are very different things here.
So let's just assume or pretend that everything went to plan. What would that look like for a good big day's diving?
Early to bed, light dinner the night before, and then on the morning of just I don't mind eating a fair bit in the morning. A lot of people say it gives them heartburn. I normally go bacon and eggs, and then just load it up, as much as you can get, and then just a bit of fruit for a morning tea, and then that'll get me through the day. So no lunch, lot of water the night before, a lot of water during, but that's it. No other secret tips or tricks.
No, biggest for me is being hydrated. I find that's how I best perform: being hydrated and being warm, feeling comfortable in the water.
So do you take any salts or hydrolyte or any of that sort of stuff?
No, I think that I've been working a long time on my overall physical, mental, emotional health and wellness, and that's a very big part of my life. So I think just generally nutritional wise, I like to keep myself ready for anything. Like if I need to go for a dive the next day, you know that you should be primed and ready.
I knew I shared a lot in common with you. Yeah.
You got those same yoga bodies, boys. It looks like you've been working on them for years.
You can tell a downward dog from 50 paces.
Yeah. Stricky's been working on a couple of cat cows on the front bow in the morning.
How bad are the cat cows? You wouldn't do them in front of people, would you?
Oh, depends who you ask.
Depends who's looking.
Depends who's doing the cat cows.
I'm one of those dudes that does yoga, and I've started only doing it in the last 12 months. And I just do it off YouTube videos. That way I can do it in my undies, in my lounge, on a yoga mat. No one sees anything, apart from if my housemate walks in awkwardly.
Was that just to get everyone thinking of you and your undies sweating on a yoga mat? Yeah, nice.
I've got that visual in my head for the rest of the night.
With Hungry Jack's special sauce just leaking down into my beard.
There goes the good night's sleep. Dun, dun, dun. Shrek's at your door.
Hey guys, let's get back to basics. Are you listening into this podcast thinking about your neglected spear guns down in the shed? But if you're like me, go to neptonics.com, buy yourself some new rubber, some new rigging, get your spear gun tip-top so that you're ready when that fishing trip comes around the corner. You get the random phone call, we've got to wear the window, the fish are running, let's get into it. Neptonics.com. To sweeten it up, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% off store-wide at neptonics.com. Get those spear guns sorted, don't be like Shrek. We've already segued there. Funny stuff. You guys have probably made a couple of jokes in your time.
Funny stuff. Funny stuff from spearing trips. The list could go on, but a lot of it's probably not appropriate for over the frequency of the radio, because a lot of the spearing trips we do are on, the boys' trips and the boys' getaways. So there's always a good time that ensues. But I do have a funny one from under the water spearing.
Fire away, yeah, shoot.
All right, so we'd wanted to shoot a big snapper for years. So hunting out of Brisbane, as anyone who's tried knows, they're a very cunning fish, very difficult to hunt and very difficult to shoot. We hadn't shot one at this stage, so we went south thinking, if you go a bit south, they might be a bit easier to shoot. We find this area, long story short, it's firing, the current's doing the right thing, there's snapper stacked up on this ledge. It's Aaron's turn to make a dive. So he dives down and I can just see him from the surface and the snapper, the school didn't spook. So they were just staying up current and
I was incredibly stealthy, mind you.
It was incredibly stealthy. He's stretched out, and when you can see the diver stretch out and give a last little kick, the snapper just didn't spook. I go, he's gonna nail this. He's on him. He's on top of it. And he pulls the trigger, and the spear just comes out ever so slowly on a 45-degree angle, and the gun wasn't loaded. He could have almost poked it in the head. At the point the snapper didn't even know.
Moved. No, the snapper didn't know it had been shot. It was just like, bloop, just hit the sand. We had been out the night before in Byron dancing on tables. I will give that as context. However, still no excuse.
So the snapper, the one that got away.
Yeah.
How good's that Aaron B2B Spearo? He's just such a good Spearo.
We all learn and grow from the experiences we have.
Did you end up shooting one, or was that the end of the story?
No, I completely cooked it. No, I got some kingies and some other cool stuff, but yeah, ended the chapter on the snapper. Only ever shot, I think, 2 after that. Yeah, no, never as big. No.
I was going to move into gear.
Yeah, sure.
What's in your gear bag, sort of head to toe? What's your go-to gear up?
For what we have on this trip?
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's do this trip.
Yeah, okay. So I've got a Dreno Weddy, 3mm. I've got, long-bladed fiberglass fins, decent gloves, weight belt, mask, GoPro mount. I got a Hollis mask with the little inbuilt GoPro mount, which is great. Is that what it's called? Hollis? Yeah, Hollis is the brand. Me preferably with a mask. It can't be tinted. It's got to be clear. I like them big-eyed and low profile.
Yeah. And that does it for you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it does it for me. Yeah, I've just used them since I was 12, 13, 14, and it's the only masks I've ever used, that profile.
With the GoPro mask, have you ever banged your head on the roof of a cave and flooded your mask?
Yeah. Oh, not flooded my mask, maybe once or twice, but I'm quite mindful now because I've been wearing the GoPro on the top for a while, and I try not to stick my head in places it doesn't belong, which isn't always the case, but do my best. Got a 1.4 Rob Allen and a 1.1 Rob Allen for close quarters in around the reef.
Rollers or?
I do like rollers. I swap between both, but yeah, ideally I'd have a 1.1 roller and a 1.3, 1.4 railgun. Optimal. I like using a carbon just because they tack so smooth through the water, so light. And yeah, then I've got a 30-meter float line, then a big yellow Adreno float which is sensational because it's got to be
It's that big 15-litre
15-litre
Spearmaster type one.
Yeah, as long as as long as the float is made out of something really durable, if it's inflatable or a hard one, and bright, super bright. And yeah, just all your normal stuff. I got a couple of reels on the guns to 50 meters, good knife, and yeah, all my bits and pieces and spares. Loctite 406 is a good one to have. Yeah, for cuts or for little bits and pieces and mends. So yeah, Stricky.
Loctite 406. I think you're the first person that's ever mentioned that, and it's probably quite a common one. Yeah, righto.
Really, one of the guys on board actually cut himself with a knife recently. He just got his whole leg Loctited back up. So
Loctite's really practical. We use
really,
it a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if that should be proper medical advice, but
Loctite all cuts.
Yeah. As for my dive bag, we actually just did a video last week and put it on YouTube, explaining
I'll link it up then.
What we put on in our travel bag there for our Pacific tours. So
I did actually see that. Yeah, I didn't watch the video, but I saw the link and I thought,
it's specifically for blue water spearing, but it covers a lot of what we have on trips generally. Yeah.
But for this trip, I've got Adreno 3mm wetsuit. As you mentioned, I'm going to get a bit cold, so Adreno 5mm wetsuit over the top. And I've been mixing and matching them, depending what the temperature's like.
What goes better?
Well, I'm actually going a bit away from what most people suggested here. I'm going the warm 5mm long john pants over my shoulder, the overalls, and then the 3mm over the top.
And that works for you?
At the moment, it does. Yeah. If I miss a few fish, I'll blame it on the wetsuit setup. And then as for guns, I've got a 1-1 Samburu Rob Allen. I really like that on the shallow reef. And then I've just got a brand new 1-3 roller, Samburu roller, and I feel like a bully hunting on the reef with it. It's just, the gun is too good. So I find that really, really good for an area of the Spanish mackerel around. It gives you that bit of range. And on the reef for jobbies, and trout, and red emperor, and those kind of things, you just feel like a bully. It's just got so much range, and it's an awesome gun.
Are you a mono shooting line man, or what are you doing?
I just run it however it comes from the shop, to be honest, and however
it never breaks.
Yeah, and it never breaks. That's right. But yeah, I'm not too opinionated either way. I'd just throw it on, and she'll be right, and just run with it.
And if he loses a fish, the rigging line wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Love it. Let's do last section. Spearo Q&A. You guys ready? Fast-paced question.
Who are you hitting with? Is it?
Let's go, Jack. Dream spearfishing destination.
Louisiade Archipelago. The Louisiade Archipelago. It's an archipelago in Papua New Guinea. It's really remote, hard to get to, crystal clear blue water, and not many people. Big dogtooth tuna.
Yeah, righto. Awesome. All right. Have you got a dream destination?
Yeah, I'd like to venture over to Cocos Keeling Islands and do some diving around there.
And where's that?
Cocos Keeling Islands is off the WA coast. It's Australian owned, and other than a little bit of tourists, some retired folk living there, and a bit of a military base. There's not much happening there, and the marine life is out of control.
Dream species.
Dream species for me is always going to be the dogtooth tuna. No matter what size I get, I'll just want a bigger one. So yeah, hands down doggies for me.
Biggest so far?
40 kilos.
Okay.
Since the dogtooth has already been mentioned, I will go Cubera snapper, because I've always really loved jacks. And Cubera snapper, from what it looks like, they're big, gnarly, and found in destinations that I'd personally, for the culture, the food, the people, would love to travel.
Yeah, nice. And a different question each here. Who has been the most influential personal people in your spearfishing, Jack?
Personal person. I'd say I've been really lucky. I've started spearing with a group of mates, and we've kept that same core group of mates, and everyone in that group had a different skill set. Some had good bottom time, some could hunt pelagic, some could hunt bottom reefies on the bottom. So we've kind of blended our skill set into each other. So that group of mates, they know who they are, but Sexy Lexi, Zach Kirk and Az, that group, we've kind of all got better together, and they're the people that have helped me most for sure.
Sick, man. Good answer. Az, what does the spearfishing experience mean to you?
The spearfishing experience. For me, the spearfishing experience is about exploring and further understanding the underwater world on a deeper level, and coming home with a good bit of seafood, fresh seafood to share with your family and friends. Like that for me is the core of it.
That was nice and neat, man. Well done. That was a fast summary. Where can guys come and connect with you and find out a bit more about Back to Basics?
On Instagram, B2B Adventures, B2B Adventures on Instagram, Facebook, Back2 Basics Adventures, and website B2B Adventures, and YouTube channel B2B Adventures.
We're trying to pump out weekly episodes on YouTube, so that's a good place to spot by if you've got some time to kill.
Except when we're out here on a liveaboard charter with no reception.
Well, you'll have plenty of raw footage there to go back and edit into the next few episodes, that's for sure. What's coming up next for you guys? Have you got some big projects on the go? You do all sorts of stuff. You've done a bit of TV, you've done Great Northern, you've done bloody...
Yeah, so our brand's kind of split into these different kind of areas, and that we do marketing and promotion for brands like, Great Northern, like you touched on, and BCF. So that takes us on some pretty cool adventures. But the Pacific tours we've been running are going really well, and there's a heap of cool spots we want to get to. Unfortunately, due to the whole COVID-19 thing, that's had to be shut down.
So that's charter business.
Yeah, so we're meant to be in Vanuatu at the moment for the whole month of June, but that, due to travel restrictions, is closed down. So as soon as borders open, we'll be looking at getting back deep into the Pacific and taking some people with us.
Yeah, and in terms of in the next, say, 6 to 12 months, places we'd really like to get to or go back to. One is Haggerston Island, which is, to give everyone context if you don't know, is up below. It's on the Great Barrier Reef in northern far north, as north as you get Cape York, just under Torres Strait Island. So there's an island there and atolls and reefs and shelves around it that are exquisite, and just the whole adventure of getting there. We'd take a trailer boat, take the truck, make a bit of a mission of it. And we'd love to get up to Papua New Guinea again. We've done a trip there together quite a few years ago now, and just the untouched adventures that are accessible through there, we need to find out what's accessible. So
Sounds sick. You guys have got to build an awesome thing. Great YouTube channel. I think anyone that listens to this podcast is going to get a ton of value and have a ton of vicarious fun. I think just from watching you blokes actually live the life that a lot of us would like. I think so. Awesome, and really cool to chat with you.
No, we really appreciate you having us on, Isaac. Great to meet you, and I look forward to diving with you tomorrow. And we love what you do with the podcast, like connecting people with stories and real life experiences from other people can only make others become safer and just build that curiosity in their adventures.
Thanks for having us on, mate. Loved it.
Thanks for sharing your story, guys. Powerful, awesome, cool.
Peace and love, everyone.
Spearing Magazine are the world's premier spearfishing magazine. It's a publication for Spearos by Spearos. It's full of just hard-charging articles to inspire your next spearfishing adventure. Check it out at spearingmagazine.com.
Massive chat with the B2B Adventure boys today. Awesome to get out on that charter trip with them and just chat. I could have carried on with those boys all the time. I'm going to get up north and hang out with them and do a bit more diving with them. Also, a big thanks today to Joe Hayes, the podcast editing guru who's put this show together for us. So big hands together for Joe. Cheers, bro. And hey, if you love the Noob Spearo podcast, come along to Patreon and support the podcast on an episode-by-episode basis. Join about 30 other legend patrons over there funding the Noob Spearo podcast. You get access to an exclusive episode, the first of many. There's an episode in there all about spearfishing equipment. It goes for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Just everything you need to know about equipment. Really good, interesting, funny chat, and some really cool insights. And all we talk about is spearfishing equipment. It's amazing how deep down that rabbit hole we go. So go to patreon.com/Noob Spearo to get hold of that and listen to that exclusive episode. Big thanks to the Back to Basics boys today. And thanks for listening to you and leaving reviews, sharing the show with mates. It helps us grow. Legends, see you again in a fortnight. Boos. Oh, hey, by the way, the next episode is the bunker charter trip chopper rescue story. And there's a whole heap of cool stuff in there, along with some interviews with all the other people I went diving with for that week. So check it out. See ya.
The Noob Spearo podcast. Great content, fantastic guests. And to go with that, we've got some free online courses by Ted Hardy at Immersion Freediving. Head over to noobspearo.com/Ted and learn to take a bigger breath hold. Learn how to use your full chest to take down more fuel so that you can stay on the bottom for longer. Check it out, noospearo.com/TED.